Thank you for having me here today. This meeting is very important to us here at Dexcom. As you know, we've taken this journey with you for quite some time, and our relationship has very much evolved over the years. I started at Dexcom in 2011 as the DIY community was really becoming visible out there, and in all fairness, we weren't quite sure what to do or how to collaborate, how to make this work, because it's just so different than where we all came from in medical devices. But I'm very proud over the years that we found ways to do things better together, to make diabetes management better for everybody, to bring innovations to the market, to our own products, and to really change our ways of thinking on some of the things that we do and making the world better. I was asked today to talk to you a bit about the future of continuous glucose monitoring and what we see at Dexcom and what we see for the future. I'll spend the first half of my remarks talking about Dexcom, what we see in CGM, and some of the things we're working on that I think would be important to you. Then I talked to Amy before the presentation and said, you know what, why don't we take on some of the questions that the group might anticipate, rather than just me keep giving the canned Dexcom presentation, because I know your minds are way further out here than we'd be thinking in a corporate presentation. So that's what we're going to do today. CGM really is the center of diabetes therapy in the future across the board. As you look at the things that people who battle diabetes need, as you look at the services they need from clinicians, hospitals, or educators, CGM is the absolute best tool to help enable these people to take better care of patients. And we have clearly seen that during these COVID times, as our Clarity system has been used by many, many clinics, much more than they've ever used it before, to take care of patients in these times when they can't go to the offices. On the analytics side, again, we have learned all sorts of things using CGM about our patient base with respect to, for example, time in range, as that's becoming the new metric, and as we evaluate algorithms to make patients healthier. On an interesting note, on the analytics side, we are now learning a tremendous amount about the effectiveness of type 2 drugs and type 2 therapies, and how type 2 patients are treated long before they migrate to insulin. We spend a tremendous amount of money on type 2 diabetes, and I'll get to that a little more in the presentation later, but the analytics derived from CGM truly measure the effectiveness of those outcomes better than anything they've ever seen. And go to the drug side. Again, we just announced a partnership with Lilly on the drug side with their fast-acting insulin. We're going to use our Dexcom G6 to measure the effectiveness of that insulin and help educate the clinicians as they put people on that insulin to show how well it works. One of the things that has, I think, truly been driven by this community, or you've been a large part of it, is now the new standards that we have for interoperability with continuous glucose monitoring, and the iCGM category that's been created, where continuous glucose monitoring technology can be used across the board. I think this is a very interesting innovation, and something that we've certainly led the field in. It's also something that is, in all fairness, a bit hard to manage from time to time, because everybody wants to be partnered with you and everybody else, and we want to, and relationships get difficult. And balancing interoperability and a commercial company is one of our biggest challenges, because if you know, sometimes the question is, if you're partners with everybody, are you partners with anybody? Conversely, we want to give patients choice. And it's one of the most difficult decisions that we balance, but I think at the end of the day, it is going to lead to better solutions for patients, to better technology offerings, and better things in the community. And we're doing our very best to create interoperable offerings and to make sure those relationships work for both us and for our partners. And we've done it in numerous ways, and I'll talk about some of those ways later on in my presentation. When we launched our G6 product 2 years ago, we knew it would have a big impact on the marketplace, because we really addressed some of the things that patients needed going forward. We made it much easier to insert, obviously, with the automatic inserter. On top of that, the thinner profile and the connectivity to the phone, which we had before in G5, but it just was so much different. And the results in the marketplace of G6 have really been nothing short of phenomenal. As you look at, the first number on that slide is 4 billion finger sticks eliminated. I can't tell you how many patients since G6 has been launched with no calibrations and no finger sticks required have come to me and said, look at my hands. They're better than they've ever been. 23 billion glucose readings from G6, 17 plus million low glucose soon alarms have been acknowledged, and 3.5 million of those have been overnight while somebody was sleeping, keeping somebody safe. The number of people now using Share, more than 450,000 people in the Share Follow system. And I know that number's true because when the servers went out last Thanksgiving, most of you found me and let me know. Some even actually found my wife's cell phone number and called her to let her know the Share system was out. Made for a very long Thanksgiving weekend at the Sayers, but we hopefully have put things in place to not have that happen again. The other thing about G6 that's changed CGM significantly is just patient usage. In the past, our previous generation products, people would wear them and then take relatively long breaks before they'd wear the next one. Not with G6. Use of CGM has become much more continuous as patients truly become dependent upon the product for their entire glucose management. So since I was asked to speak about what we believe the future of CGM is, in addition to continue to serving patients in the insulin-using community, particularly the patients here at this conference, I think it's important that we talk about what we think is another big future area of CGM and a very, very important unmet need in the diabetes community in general, and that's type 2 diabetes. I've gone to many payer meetings at Dexcom, the people who reimburse us for our current system, and we go to those meetings and we go to talk to them about our current patient base and people with type 1 diabetes, how the product can help to negotiate contracts and such. And in all reality, as a percentage of their total patient base, the number of people with type 1 diabetes is not a very big number. But when you start mentioning type 2 diabetes to these people, their eyes light up because the amount of money they spend in taking care of people with type 2 diabetes is just huge. It is one of the biggest costs within our health system in the United States. And to the extent we can make an impact there, which we think we can, we want to take CGM technology to that market. One of the most interesting developments over the past few years, and one that we think will continue to gain momentum going forward, and we're certainly in favor of this, is the use of time in range as the measure of effectiveness for diabetes therapies. There's a consensus statement now internationally that says time in range should be the consensus for both type 1 and type 2 patients. Well, again, look at the size of this type 2 population in the United States. That's 27 million patients. And as you review cost data that we've seen from many of the payers, the amount of money spent on the average patient with type 2 diabetes, even those not on insulin, is not a whole lot different than the average amount spent annually on those with type 1 diabetes, as these patients develop complications and they have other comorbidities that go with this. So to the extent we can get time in range the measure for the effectiveness of these therapies, we believe we can get better treatment for these patients and ultimately save the system money. For us, the type 2 diabetes market, it's important from a number of perspectives. We can make a lot more sensors. We can address a lot more of the population. It's very much a cost-saving opportunity for the healthcare system. One of the things we've talked about frequently on our calls, Intermountain Healthcare ran a study on a group of patients, which they're now making much larger, where they had one group of type 2 patients on finger sticks, the other group wore CGM full-time for 6 months. Their average cost savings in this patient population was $5,000 a year, or approximately, around $400 a month. You're talking very big dollars, and the only way you can get savings like this is if people are educated and they know what to do based on CGM and how to keep their time in range better. So many people have asked us, what is a patient with type 2 diabetes going to do wearing a CGM all the time? Because they're not titrating insulin, they're not managing a pump, they don't need an alert and alarm. Well, this slide really demonstrates the benefit of CGM in the type 2 world. This is a part of a program put together by United Healthcare with their type 2 patients. They'll be rolling out in a bigger form this year called Level 2. And they start with putting a patient on CGM to develop a baseline and say, okay, let's see what's going on in your life. They've developed a number of analytics around the data from the CGM internally as they've taken data from the system to identify things that a patient could change. So with this particular patient, you see this patient was going extremely high in their meals throughout the course of the day. What happened with this patient is they just changed timing of some drugs and had this patient do something just a little bit different, and look what happened after that recommendation. So when a patient gets a recommendation like this and it's that effective, imagine how they'll react to the next one. When you compare the utility of CGM in this patient population to any other tool they have, there's nothing close. And so we're very excited about this opportunity. We think it has a very big future going forward, and we're looking forward to addressing it here at Dexcom. Well, here's a slide I know you've all been waiting for, and quite candidly, most of you would have loved I devote the whole presentation to this and other products and configurations we're going to develop in the future. That's not happening. This is going to be the only G7 slide that we have, but I'm really excited to talk about it today. As you all know, it'll be another real-time sensor, similar to what we had. Factory calibrated. We believe our factory calibration methodologies are continuing to mature and be better. We'll ultimately get this product to 15 days. As we announced our earnings call just a while ago, we're going to launch it as a 10-day product. And not because we can't get to 15. Our 15-day data, in all fairness, is very good. But what we see, given our algorithm, is several of them shut off because we have to meet the iCGM standards, and that's how our algorithm works. We really don't want to create a reliability experience for our patients that we find unacceptable. So we'll work on that over time. We believe we can do it with more clinical work and more studies. And with respect to clinical work, one of the things that's been frustrating with this technology, we got ready to go, and then COVID hit, and we talk about experience a 6-month delay. We truly have experienced 6 months in delays in the clinics of getting started, but we're back there. We're working on it. We're going. Product will be coming relatively soon, by our standards anyway. It is fully disposable. It is so easy to put on, you can hardly imagine it. We're obviously going for multiple locations of wear in the arm and the abdomen, and the labeling, not just wherever you want. We're designing the product to be worn in both places. As many of you know, I've talked to Amy enough. I walk around with the G7 on most of the time to see what I can learn about the product and how it's performing. I wish I'd found something remarkable on it, but I haven't. It's given me a great glucose experience so far, and just the experience in general, it is so small that you don't notice it on your body whatsoever. Another important thing for everybody to know about G7 is over time, we will pull a lot of cost out of manufacturing. This product was designed to be manufactured from the very beginning. In the past, even G6, we designed products to whereby we could put them together manually because we didn't have automated equipment, or in all fairness, we hadn't been able to make the capital investment to put automated equipment together. We just didn't have those kind of resources. We have those resources now. G7 will be a fully automated manufacturing process, and the cost can come out of it. Another important thing to know, as people say, what is Dexcom doing? We're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars automating G6 manufacturing, and those efforts have led to a great product. We are turning around and spending even more millions of dollars to automate G7 manufacturing. The equipment used for G6 and G7 are not at all the same. We've literally obsoleted what we do in a very short period of time. It's a decision that took us, for example, 15 years to make and get comfortable with, moving from the G5 configuration to G6. But the future of CGM isn't just about hardware. It's going to be about enhancing our software and surrounding the ecosystem to improve the CGM experience for everybody. More intuitive user faces, and not just interfaces, online ordering, automated tech support, new workflow solutions for clinicians. We intend, particularly as we get this G7 platform out here, to really focus on those areas. We're using very advanced analytics now to help make our future CGM systems customizable. I guess that's the right word. You can customize them for specific use cases, for intensive insulin delivery, for automated insulin delivery, for all the things in the current population that we serve, but also to take care of somebody with type 2 diabetes or somebody who just wants to use a product for fitness. That will include our own software, our own features. That will include enabling us to partner with people in a way that's different than what any of you have ever seen before. And so we're building a number of tools going forward that will get G7 out across the board, and again, improve diabetes care on a spectrum that's this big, bigger than I can hold my arms out, than the one where we are today. We're really excited for it, and we're very excited to make this investment and to get this product out to you guys. Okay, now the fun part, where I'm going to try and answer your questions as best I can, or at least the questions that Amy gave to me. I will participate in a live Q&A afterwards, so you will get a chance to ask me questions. So the first question is pretty simple. What will it take for Dexcom to prioritize patient data access, both real-time and retrospectively? It's a tough question. I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to do that with the API system we built. We have numerous partners who use the APIs and the retrospective data to do things that they want. I won't read the list. You all know who they are. We also are working very hard on real-time API to allow certain partners to have access to that data with a real-time API. Again, that is running the Dexcom app first and then accessing the data. We have to do that in a regulated manner with the FDA. The API is going to be regulated, and we will have to offer that along the terms and conditions that we agree with the FDA to do that. We've always made this a priority. It's interesting. I love the nature of the question, because it kind of gets to the nature of my job and what I have to do. What do we prioritize, and where do we spend our money? In all fairness, it has taken us a long time to get CGM to the point where it is what you can rely on to treat your diabetes, and the product that we have today and those we're developing in the future. And most of our spend on the development side has been on the physical nature of the product and making it better and getting that product out to patients and manufacturable. I think over the next several years, as I alluded to earlier as I talked about G7, our spending will shift to creating that better experience for patients, and also to data and analytics, and maybe there will be ways that we can find that are much better to get data to groups or to individuals. But we all have to remember two things. It is a regulated environment, so we will play by the rules. And the second thing you have to remember is we are a company, and we have to do things that are beneficial ultimately to our shareholders and to our bottom line, in addition to pleasing our customers. Usually the two go hand in hand. So I think we'll get better here, but let's not forget how hard we've worked on this front so far. Our second question is, what is Dexcom going to do to reduce lag time? And what are we doing to our sensors to eliminate that problem? You know, as we go through sensor design and engineering, as we develop new products, we try and knock off problems one by one. And lag time is something we've talked about for a long time. There was a study recently done in the Mayo Clinic to measure the lag time between interstitial fluid and blood glucose, and after numerous studies and numerous measurements, that lag time has been determined to be about 5 minutes in general. And we do things to try and approach that number. We innovate to try and get there. We've tried a number of things over the course of the years: longer sensors, shorter sensors, different membranes, different predictive features in the algorithms, and I think we've done a good job at moving the bar on that as much as we can. But I think one of the things we all have to remember with respect to something like lag time and many of the features of sensors, physiology is very much individualized, and there are some people where lag is going to be different than others. By and large, as we look at features to improve in the future, we'll address it more, but right now we're much more focused on things like our sensor reliability. and things of that nature. Our next question relates to APIs. Does Dexcom plan to continue to allow real-time access to APIs, and what are our plans for API access outside the United States? Well, first of all, we don't have real-time access through APIs yet. That is a technology and an application that we are currently in the process of submitting and getting approved by the FDA here in the United States, and we have not rolled that out on an international basis yet. With respect to APIs, I think, I'd applaud our efforts to try and get data to various partners and groups through the API program, and there are a number of companies who we partnered with get data to software experiences that are experiences different than what we offer, and those relationships have been very successful so far. We absolutely continue to do that. On a global basis, we have a very private API, a retrospective relationship today, and very few of those. We will work on that more in the future, but the complexity of international data privacy issues and all those things have to be considered as we build infrastructure to support an effort of that nature, and we'll look at that as time goes on. But we absolutely plan to continue to support the APIs. We think it's a great opportunity for our patients and for us. Data rights. This is a question I've been asked for many, many years, and I would love to have a perfect answer for this. What restrictions do we place on the use of data, and how do we reconcile those restrictions with patient data ownership? Let's be very clear. I personally believe, and I believe it is our company's philosophy, that patients should have control over their data. Their data is their own personal data. It's for their health care and for their well-being. What restrictions do we place on it? Again, we are a regulated company. We are regulated by the FDA here in the U.S. We're regulated in other countries now with even more stringent requirements. We have a somewhat limited sandbox in which we can play. We tried to create the APIs. Hopefully the real-time APIs can be launched in a manner where people can use it. We have tried to create, through interoperability, the ability for patients to have their data used in an environment that is beneficial to them. Our partnerships with the Tandem pump out now, with the insulin pump coming in the future, with Bluetooth pens and other such devices, certainly will give patients more choice. We've worked with the Tidepool team on the algorithm to get that AID system to market as well that can be used by others. But we have to play in the sandbox created by regulators, and so we're cognizant of that too. This is another piece that will evolve over time. We've made investments here. We'll continue to make them, but we have to play by the rules. All right, the fifth question, transparency. What steps is Dexcom taking to be transparent when changes are made that affect the patient, the physician, and customer experiences? I think we've learned a great deal about this over the past several years. Particularly, we've gotten bigger. When we had the follow outage last Thanksgiving, the community was very loud and clear with us, as I said earlier on the slides, that we'd not communicated properly, that we had this happen. We did not have the alerts to the followers and the proper things set up to deal with the problem, at least in the eyes of the community. And in all fairness, we didn't. As I said, I heard from a number of you personally, and as did my wife. So we're better here, and we've made a lot of strides to make sure that we can communicate better on the follow side. So we did listen. I think one of the cases that we're referring to in this question, and one of the reasons it's been asked, is with respect to the recent noise in the community about the adhesive change. And we did change our adhesive. We changed our adhesive for a very specific reason. Our sensors fell off too frequently. And that is not the experience anybody signs up for, to wear a sensor that falls off at 8 days under normal wear circumstances. We spent years studying adhesives to change to that would be stickier for patients. And after a number of analyses and a number of years, this is the one that we picked. In all fairness, it has achieved the goal that we'd hoped. Our patients are getting a better experience with respect to sensor wear on a grand scale. The sensors are staying on the body longer. What we did not intend to create is the situation where several patients have had a very severe skin reaction to the chemicals included in our new adhesive. We did not see it to the extent that the community is experiencing it as the adhesive been launched. We didn't see that much in our testing. So what are we going to do about it going forward? We are testing the chemical composition of that adhesive at great lengths. We're trying to identify some improvements we can make to it, testing them now. Hopefully we'll have an answer that will solve many of those problems in the not too distant future. And I think maybe the lesson to learn here is with respect to adhesive, we could have communicated that to the community in advance, but in reality, for the large number of patients, this has been an improvement. For a number of you, it has not been. We have to balance what we communicate to the community very carefully as far as the changes that we make, because we're not under an obligation to, gee, we tweaked line 37 of the code this month, because it really doesn't change the patient experience. I think on the adhesive, this is probably a good point. We could have communicated that to the community a little bit better, and we'll take that under consideration going forward. Our next question is on product design and how do we approach accessibility when building interfaces that users react with. You know, we've taken great strides in improving our user interfaces. We've gone from virtually an engineering shop in the early days as we tried to figure things out to where we're very much driven by our user interface team, and I think the products you'll see from us coming forward will definitely show that how do we give a patient an experience they can interact with that'll lead to the best positive outcomes. You know, from a technical standards, we've worked hard to make our website a AA standards. And G6, you know, they gave me the name of these. I'm not sure what it all means. The WCAG AA standard, we met with G6, and we hope to go to AAA on subsequent releases. We're all in on accessibility and user experience. We think it's the future of the business and really the most important thing we can do to get more people to have better outcomes with their diabetes. Our next question, question 7, relates to sensor accuracy. How good can factory calibrated sensors get in the future, and how good can we make one? You know, our G6 factory calibrated sensor has been the most accurate sensor ever since it's been launched, and it's been a wonderful product for patients. Our focus right now, as far as factory calibrated sensors, is more on sensors that are on the edges, sensors that are outliers, that are just not good enough, and bringing them in to whereby we create the experience to whereby all the sensors perform the same and we don't get as many on the outskirts. I think sensor accuracy can continue to improve and refine over time as the algorithms get more sophisticated, as we learn more about how sensors behave, possibly even through AI as you design stuff for physiology, but that's a ways out. What's most important for us right now is really knocking the outliers down and getting that range tighter more than anything else. I think there can be great developments here in the future, though, and I think it'll be really fun to see how it unfolds. Okay, now for the really fun questions here. Dexcom has made CGMs available as iCGM, but to date there have been no truly interoperable closed-loop systems that take advantage of it, i.e. plug-and-play systems. What does the future of diabetes device interoperability hold? You know, that's a tough question. We have taken interoperability position ever since I started being associated with this company back in 2007, and to date we have one fully integrated system on the market with Tandem, another one coming with Insulet in the not too distant future. So I can sense and understand everybody's frustration. Don't think for 1 minute we haven't shared some of the same ones. We support interoperability, but we also see some of the questions and some of the issues related to it also. If you work with everybody, do you really work with anybody? If you make a system that's completely interoperable and then is copyable, do you eventually run yourself out of business because you've done that? I'm of the belief in the big world where we make things interoperable and there's 7 billion potential customers, interoperability is a very simple answer. As far as I'm concerned, from a business perspective, we all have business we have to run, and we have to figure out the balance between interoperability and making sure our businesses achieve our business goals as well. We've been supportive of that from the very beginning. We will continue to be. We'll continue to get our CGM as many places as we can. But we do question ourselves. Are we giving the best to all of our partners because we're trying to be with all of our partners versus focusing on a few? For now, we'll focus on all of them. I think this will be a growing trend and something that will be one of the more controversial and interesting topics in our industry in the future. I mean, if you sit and think about it, I grew up in the car business. I can't imagine walking into a car place and saying, I'd like a Corvette body and a Tesla engine and a Ford transmission. And, you know, that system's pretty tough. We're asking us as an industry to do something that is much different than what's been done before. And as long as patients are safe and we have great outcomes, I'm in full support. So we have to balance business issues, patient needs, and community demands between the three. We've tried hard to balance them all as best we can. But more is going to evolve here over the future, and I don't know the answer to it in the end. I look forward to seeing how it unwinds. Next question is pretty specific and not as theoretical as some of the others. Will we ever see a combined sensor infusion set? You know what? If it makes sense from a business perspective, we'd be willing to try it. You have a situation where we're developing a technology that everybody wants to last longer, and even in the best case, an infusion set's not going to last out to 2 weeks. So how do we do this on a cost-effective basis? I think obviously having everything in one place provides patients a unique benefit that they don't have today. Yet as we make our CGM smaller and less obtrusive, how big is the need? But if we see an answer here that is fantastic and gives a great patient experience, I would not eliminate that from discussion, or other integrated type of systems that might be beneficial to the patient community. They have to make business sense for us. You know, and then my last pre-identified question here before we go to live Q&A, what are our plans to increase availability of CGM augmented therapy to people with diabetes? What are we doing as far as making it standard of care, equitable distribution, and everything along those lines? We have worked really hard to make CGM accessible to as many patients as we can. As we even mentioned on our earnings call a few days ago, we have seen our prices decrease significantly over the past couple of years on a per patient basis per year as we've gone to new channels and to new markets to make CGM more accessible. To the tune, the number that we talked about in our earnings call is we've given $150 million in price, approximately we will in 2020, to get CGM accessible to more patients. To the extent that distribution becomes easier and we can get it through a pharmacy channel or we get it through an easier Medicare standard, we have been more than willing to make CGM more affordable and more accessible to patients. We have every intention over time of making this technology more affordable to the patient community. We also believe, or at least I believe personally, that there may be use cases that are worth more money and demand, in fact, a higher price, and some that may demand a lower price because of the function and the experience that we create. So I think we'll have multiple pricing models over time, but we have every intention as we scale the business and get capacity to make hundreds of millions of sensors, not just what we make today, of bringing the cost of our sensors down and passing those costs on to patients. I think the costs, though, that are ignored and are often not thought about by the community are the costs of supporting the sensor patients and the patients with diabetes. You know, a guy I once worked with when I worked at MiniMed made the comment it costs a lot more to put that 1-800 MiniMed number on the back of a pump than to make the pump. And we do require support for our patients. Hopefully, as we make more automated tools and better software experiences and higher quality products, that cost comes down to, and we can pass those costs along as well. And I think to make the product standard of care, in all fairness, the cost of the product has to come down. We have to balance that with our business considerations as well. But I agree with you completely. We need to make it more accessible. We've had numerous access wins over the past several years in making CGM available to a lot more people, and we'll continue to do that. Well, that's it for my prepared remarks and my answers to the questions that were given to me previously. Again, thanks for the opportunity to give some prepared remarks to the group, and I'll now take some live questions from you and see how I can do with those. Thanks again for having me.